Hello, my name is Maya and I've been a natural dyer for almost 20 years. Now you may have heard about dyeing with walnut husks, but did you know you can also dye with the walnut leaves? It's a simple process and I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's get to it. Now dyers typically dye with the walnut husks that look like this because these husks contain a high concentration of tannin and jugalone, which is where we get that brown dye. However, all parts of the walnut tree have both of those chemicals, just not in as high of a concentration. That means we can also dye with the leaves. So if you want to dye with the husks of a black walnut, I did a video all about that and I will have a link to that down below. But today we're going to dye with the leaves. It's a simple process. So let's get started by going through the supplies. We have our dye pot and our dye spoon. And this is when I remind you that anything that we do with natural dyes, we do not use again in our kitchen. This is for dyeing only, right? Okay, so dye pot, our dye spoon, and then our fiber and our leaves. So the fiber that I'm going to use today is a wool. It's a protein fiber. It is pre-mordanted with alum. Now the leaves that I'm using, these are actually not black walnut leaves. This is a different type of walnut tree. It can be called the common walnut, English walnut, Persian walnut, because I wanted to show you that different trees can make different colored dyes. So whatever type of walnut tree you have access to, try the leaves and see what happens. So for instance, these are brown colors that I got from a black walnut. And actually these are from green leaves and these are from yellow leaves. So try both. And then this is a little sample. This is actually an after dye, but this is a little sample that I got from this leaf. Now, an after dye actually means that once I've finished dyeing my main yarn, when there's dye left over, I add in another little sample. So this shows you can get a variety of different colors just from using the walnut leaves. Now, the thing about the leaves is they have tannin in them. And when you have something with tannin, you don't always have to mordant, but I will always still mordant. So tannin is one of the chemicals that will help the protein fiber bond with the dye. But mordanting really helps with the color fastness of the dye and the intensity of the color because more dye receptors on the fiber will open up and bond with the dye molecules. So you do not have to mordant your fiber when you're dyeing with walnuts, but I still prefer to do it. So just like trying different leaves, try both mordanted and unmordanted because it's all an experiment. And you might notice that this fiber is soaking in warm water, and this is going to be for when we add it into our dye. You want the fiber to be warm and, I was going to say moisturized, warm and wet, because the water is also going to help open up the dye receptors on the fiber, and it's going to help make a more even dye. So those are the supplies. That's the type of leaf that we're using. So let's actually start the process. So our first step is to process our leaves. Actually, the first step is to pick your leaves, which means we need to talk about ratio. So for a leaf dye like this, I like to use a 2-to-1 ratio. So I have twice the weight of leaves than I do to my wool that I'm going to dye. So when it comes to this dye that we're doing today, I have 100 grams of leaves because I have 50 grams of wool. So when you're going to process your leaves, you want to tear them up into little pieces. This is because the leaves have tannin in them. And tannin works best when it reacts to oxygen. And it's also good just when you're typically doing a dye to tear it up into little pieces, just to help the dye molecules release into the water. I feel like it gives a better dye. So I'm gonna tear up these pieces into these leaves and to tear up these leaves into little pieces like I am doing, like this. And then I'm going to put them into my dye pot. I'm going to fill it up with boiling water, and then I'm actually going to leave it for at least a day. Again, this is all about the tannins. Tannins work best when they're exposed to oxygen. So when you have a dye stuff that has a lot of tannins in it, it's better to do the dye over a longer period of time. So for this dye, I'm gonna let the leaves sit in the water overnight or a couple of days, just to let it really get steeping in the water and get the dye and the tannins all released. And then I'm going to heat it up and do the dye. So because I don't want to come back in a couple of days, I've already skipped a step and I have a dye solution made. So hold on one second. Okay, so these leaves I've had soaking for about 24 hours, and you can see the color in there is yellow. Now that's because the leaves also have some flavonoids. Flavonoids or flavonoids? Flavonoids in them, which is a yellow dye. Very common for plant material to have this dye chemical. And that is the first that is going to be released. So we want to pour this into the pot, and then we're going to heat it for at least an hour. Now this, you can simmer it, you can boil it, it's totally fine. And you're gonna watch the dye turn from yellow to a darker yellow to an orange or even almost a brown. And the color change is how I determine that the dye is ready for me to use. So I'm going to soak this, I'm going to boil this for an hour, and then we will come back and add our fiber. So it has been simmering / boiling for about an hour, and I'm checking the color and it looks great. It's like a deep yellow, orangish brown. And so at this point, I'm gonna add my wool. So again, this has been soaking in warm water. It is well saturated. And I'm gonna add this directly into my pot with the leaves. If you want, you can strain the leaves out. A lot of dyers like to strain out their dye material before they add their fiber. I just happen to keep everything in the same pot. So you can see, oh, look at that. It's immediately turning this beautiful yellowish color, which makes sense, like we talked about, right? The flavonoids. So I'm gonna leave this in here again for a minimum of a half an hour. This is really gonna be up to you and your personal preference. So watch your fiber in your pot, stir it around a couple times and leave it in there for a minimum of a half an hour just to give the dye time to absorb into the fiber. And then when you like that color, that's when you're gonna pull it. Remember, it's gonna dry a little bit lighter than when it is wet, but you can keep it in for a half an hour. You could keep it in for an hour. You can just leave it in the dye pot overnight. It's really up to you. The longer it stays in, the darker it gets. So I'm just gonna let this hang out for about a half an hour, and then we will check it again and see if it's time to pull. Okay, it has been about a half an hour, and we're gonna get to the best part, which is we're gonna check the color and see if it is Oh yeah, it is. It is perfect. Here, let me get this off the little tie. Look how amazing that is. I want to squeeze out the extra dye, but it's so hot. It's like this beautiful, like, golden brown, just like this color that just says autumn to me. Like, I just want to get cozy and knit kind of color. I love it. I love this color. And I think I'm just going to pull it now because I don't need it to be any darker. I really love the bright vibrancy of it. I'm going to pull it. I'm pulling it. It's been a half an hour and I'm pulling it. So again, if you want to keep it in longer, go for it. It's really a personal preference type situation. So you can see that even with walnut leaves, you can get beautiful, bright color and a variety of color when you compare these other little samples I did with the black walnut with the common walnut. So I hope you give this a try. Remember to try and use whatever walnut tree you have growing near you. And if you do, please let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again. If you've liked what you've watched here today, come on over to my Patreon where I post weekly all about different natural dye topics. I go more into the science of walnut trees and even how I dye with indigo, which is what I used to dye this sweater. So I hope to see you over there.